NHS's history.
Well, currently the number of people waiting for elective care in England is at 6 million, up from 4.4 million before the pandemic.
The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, last night said that the money raised from National Insurance will make sure everyone can get the care and treatment they need. And we will be speaking to the Health Secretary at around 8:45 this morning.
But right now we're going to speak to Hilary Salt. This is Hilary Salt, and she is a pensions consultant and actuary. And here she is. Hilary, this National Insurance rise, tell us, what does it mean?
So, in terms of what it means for ordinary working people, the first thing it's going to mean is obviously less in their pay packet at the end of the day. And for somebody on average earnings, it's about £20 a month. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. Just to remind you the way all this works, so the National Insurance rise happens now, and then from July this year, there's a rise in the first threshold at which you start to pay national insurance. So from July this year, actually people will probably be about £10 a month better off for average earners. But don't forget that there's also a rise of the same amount for employers. So employers will also be paying higher national insurance. And whilst the long-term aim of this extra money is to fund both the NHS and social care, don't forget that employers in, for example, the care industry, the first thing they'll see is, first of all, a rise in their costs, and secondly, a lowering of take-home pay of care workers.
Where this just does my head in is, why are they raising it to bring it down in July? Well,
I understand what government wants to do is to protect the lower paid. Don't forget that whilst for somebody on average earnings, it will come down again in July. For people on more than about £35,000 a year, it will be a long-term increase, so they will pay more forever.
It's a PR disaster, actually, the way it's being sold, the way it's being put out there, and just the way it's being handled.
It is, but don't forget that, if we want good public services, if we want a decent state pension, these are things that do have to be paid for.
They'd be better off saying that instead of saying, there's just going to be a hike in national insurance.
And do you genuinely believe that argument? I mean, you'll have seen, the response and the numbers that came out after the spring statement, and it seems to me no one's saying that we shouldn't be investing in social care in the NHS. It's all agreed there's a huge problem. We're just talking about the numbers of people waiting for elective surgery, for example. But we're also making a lot more money through inflation on our tax receipts. We could be paying for it all through that. It doesn't have to be a tax on hard workers, and we're seing workers being sent into poverty, working poor.
Absolutely. Don't forget that, we're seeing some growth in the economy now, but we're only just about back to pre-pandemic levels. So we have, I think if we want to really improve things like waiting lists and welfare and pensions more generally, what we need to do is concentrate on growing the economy. And that's a much bigger problem, I think, than just a tax issue.
Well, look, pensions are your thing. What will this mean for pensions, state or private?
Well, national insurance is a contributory benefit that funds our state pension system as well as things like the NHS. And I think one of the things I would want to really kind of hold on to is the fact that it is a contributory system. So people pay throughout their working lives national insurance to pay for the state pension they get when they reach retirement. And I think this conflation of tax and national insurance is perhaps a little bit unhelpful.
It is unhelpful because especially none of it is ring-fenced. So none of it is absolutely promised to go and pay for your pension or for the NHS or for social care.
Although the social care levy, which actually only comes in properly from April next year, what comes in this year is a rise in NI generally. Social care levy that comes in from April next year will, I understand, be ring-fenced. Interestingly, that will be paid not just by working people, but by people over state pension age who are continuing to work. So at the moment, if you work beyond state pension age, you stop paying national insurance.
I just want to ask you the context, of course, all of this. A lot of the reason that this has been criticised is because we're talking about people seeing rising bills and inflation, and the situation in Ukraine, meaning this dependence on fuel is causing problems. Have you seen, in terms of pensions, and I'm talking about people that are investing left, right and centre, have lost a lot of value in their pensions just in the first quarter of this year?
Most people's exposure to places like the Ukraine and Russia is quite limited in terms of individual pension amounts. So I don't think that's an issue, but certainly for those people who are already receiving pensions, So the state pension went up by just over 3% when inflation is around about 8%, if measured by the RPI. So certainly people who are already receiving a pension, I think, are seeing a reduction in their living standards already because their pension payments are not keeping up with inflation.
Well, it's a depressing picture, frankly, isn't it? This April morning.